All right, wonderful people. This is where we left off when we dealt with a shallow copy, and then we created a shallow copy of my source, and we saw that my target and my source would have the same value, and every time you change my source, you are in fact overriding the value that was inside of my target. So this is just in a nutshell what we did. Now, there were problems, however, with this, because every time I change the value of my source, the target also changes. I seem not to keep a constant shallow copy of the source there. So this is highly problematic, because now how will I get around this? This is the question that one asks himself. Now let us read something before we can continue with a deep copy. Right. They say that when we assign my source.myContent.value, the value public field of my content public field of the original object also changes the value of my target.myContent.value. And this is exactly what I'm trying to explain. That's because my source.myContent refers to the same object instance as my target.myContent. And I am the one who has set up those conditions in that way inside of the cloner in here. I have made the conditions in such a way that every time you change the value of the cloner, when you instantiate the cloner, the value of my content, that value will also be the same value for my content. So I am the one who created the conditions in that way. There is, however, a way that we can modify our code in such a manner that the value of my source when I create a shallow copy remains as it is, irrespective of what the value of my content would be. So I can write a code in such a way that when I say in here my target.myContent, the value would still be 5 and not the value of 2. So we can write a code that can do that. Now they say to get around this problem that we are having, you need to perform a deep copy. You could just modify the get copy method used that we have just used in here, but it is preferable that we use the standard.NET framework way of doing things. That is to say that we can implement the iClonable interface, and the iClonable interface has only a single method which we call the clone, and this method takes no parameters and it returns an object type result, giving it a signature identical to the getCopy method that we have just used. Now the question is, how do we perform a deep copy? So I'm just going to change in here. I'm just going to rename that, and I'm going to rename this, but I think I'm going to have a problem in here. Please let me not do that. Let me not do that. I think what I can just do, okay, let me just go to the cloner in there, and I'm going to copy all this. I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to create a new project, and I'm going to call this deep copy. No. Right, what I'm going to do inside there, let me just quickly come in here, add a class, and I'm going to call that also the cloner. and I'm going to paste in everything in there, and then I'm going to add a new class that we called previously. What was the name of the class? Let me just check. Content. So this was the name of the class, and we had a public int which we called a value in there. So that should fix any problem that we have inside of Cloner. Let's see whether is it public. Yes, public int val. So when I'm inside of the Cloner in here, public content, let me check the name. Oh, it's internal. So let me just make it public, and that should solve the problem in there. So public cloner int value my content, dot val. There it is. So everything is fine in there. So what I can do in order to perform a deep copy is just simply that I can inherit from I clonable. So it has one method which is called clone in there. So it is an interface, so I have to provide an implementation for that. As you can see, that's a sign of an interface. So what is it that I'm going to manipulate in here? This method. I'm going to change this method, and I'm going to say public object, and I'm going to call this clone. It is a method, so I'm providing an implementation for that, and there it disappears. So remember, okay, can I please just do this very quickly, guys? There seems to be a problem. Okay, let's continue, wonderful people. So there is a method in there which is called clone, and then this method called clone will be the one responsible for creating a deep copy for us. So how do we implement that? First of all, we are going to say, okay, I'm going to say cloner, which is the name of my class, and I'm trying to instantiate that. I'm going to say cloned, cloner equals new, equals new cloner, and then I'm going to pass in one argument there, and as you can see that we have cloner int new val, and I'm going to pass my content dot val there. So what am I saying there? I'm saying, and this is very important, I'm saying when you instantiate a cloner, or when you invoke this method, what it will do, it will take the value that is inside of my content.val, which it will have via the instantiation of this constructor, and then it will perform what here. I'm saying cloner cloned cloner equals new cloner, and what are we cloning? My content.val there. Very important. And then we will return cloned cloner. Very important. And what does it return? It returns an object, and as you can see there, I have created an instance of cloner, and then I'm going to say this is equals to new cloner, because this cloner. Remember, cloner from here accepts, even though you saw when we stood here. What is it that I'm passing? An int new value in here. I'm passing in a value that comes from my content, very important, .var. So when I instantiate cloner, what am I going to assign? I'm going to assign inside of the class content, I'm going to assign that value. So val in here, val in here will have that value in there, because remember, content is contained inside of cloner. But I explained all this when we dealt with shallow copy, so I don't have to go deeper into that. So what is happening in here? This creates a new cloner object by using the val field of the content object contained in the original cloner object, my content. This field is a value type, so no deeper copying is necessary there. Alright, that is fine. Now let us go inside of our main, which is in here. I'm going to get rid of that. First of all, I will have a namespace, just say X. We will have a class, just say P, and then we will have a static. We will have a static void main string of arguments. And then when I'm inside of the main, what is it that I'm going to do in there? This is the first thing that I need to ask myself. What am I going to do inside there? Right, we can do something similar to what we did previously in there when we performed a shallow copy. So what we can do in there is to go to the main, and when we are in the main, we can just say cloner, and then we can say my source equals new cloner, and I can pass in the same value of 5 there. Very, very important. And then I can come again and say cloner, and I can say my target equals. Now remember what we do in here. We need to cast a cloner, and then I say my source dot. Now when I press the dot there, instead of saying get copy, we have a method there which is called clone. Very, very important. And it is a method that accepts no parameters. Where is that method? There it is. Very, very important. So when I invoke this method, what it will do, this method creates an instance of a cloner, and then it returns that object. And then when I invoke this method there, what it will do, it will take my content.val, and then because it has accepted that from there when you created a cloner, so in other words, it will take this value of 5 and create a clone for that. This is exactly what it will do. All right, and then we can just have a console.writeLine just to see how things are working in there. So what I can say there is just to say my target dot my content dot val, and I can set this to be equals to, I can say my target dot my content dot val, just like that. So this is something that I can do there. And then secondly, I can say my source dot my content, there it is, dot val. So I am trying to access the val value that is inside of another class, which is content, and then I can assign it a value of 2, and then I want to invoke this method once again. Copy that and paste, and let us try to run this. And let us see the output that we will have there. So now look what is happening now. What does that tells us? It tells us that my source, my target in here, which has a value. What is the value in there? In my target, it has a value of 5. And when I try to print out my content.target, the value is 5 there. I'm changing my source.myContent.value to 2, and then when I try to print out the value there, the value it's still 5. So it has performed a deep copy of that, of the original my source. So in here, when you say my source.myContent.val, it is not going to override the value of my target to 2. The value of my target remains at 5. Because remember that cloner in here, what it does, it looks at the constructor that you have there. It looks at this constructor here, and only the value of the constructor that you have there, it will perform a deep copy of that. If you go to my source.myContent.val and you change that value to 2, it is not going to make a deep copy of that. If you want to do that, you can therefore come here and you can say cloner, and you can say maybe, for example, cloner equals new cloner, and you can pass a value of 3, for example, in there. Now let us try to run and see what is going to happen there. And now it still does exactly the same thing. It performs a deep copy. There is no way that you can override that. There is no way. Right, let us check in here. Let me show you something. Now what I'm going to do there, I'm going to copy this and I'm going to paste it in here. So in here, I want you to see something. Now the name is my target there. Cloner target equals my source. So in here, look what is happening. I am having a cloner and I'm calling that my target. So I cannot use the same name twice there. So this one, let me call it my target 2. Let me call it my target 2. And let me check whether when I perform, I know I'm going to have 2 outputs there. So let me just comment this one. And let's see whether when I have a value of 3, will I be able to perform a deep copy of that. Right, look what is happening in here. In here, what we have, we're still having my source. I still used my source there. So I need to change and say my target. My target 2. I'm specifying for which object it needs to perform. Oh, there's a problem. And what brings the problem now? Cloner, my target 2 equals cloner. And then I am saying my target 2. Can you see what is happening here? We cannot do that. We can't do that. So in here, what we need to do there is something very, very simple. Look what we did in here. We had a cloner, there it is, and then I had my target and I passed in my source there. So that is exactly something that I need to do. I have a cloner there, the value is 3. I have a cloner, my target 2, and I'm saying that is equals to, I need to say not my target 2 here, I need to say cloner. And then everything will be fine. So it is very, very important that we have this interactive learning so that at the end of the day we understand why things have to be the way in which they are. And of course we will have a value there. Now look what I am printing there, my target. I'm not printing my target 2. So I still need to go in here and specify that this is my target 2. And let us try to run and check whether things will be fine. And the value now is 3. So please, you need to be careful as to how you do things in there. Highly careful. So sometimes we allow ourselves to do mistakes so that we understand exactly how this deepCopy works. So this is just something, guys, that I wanted to share with you when it comes to shallow copy and deepCopy. And I hope and believe that we have both understood exactly how things are happening there. So thanks a lot, guys, for watching. I will see you in the next tutorial.